Chapter 18. Straightforward. Joseph. The whole world was on the move. That's what it felt like anyway. The road was clogged with travellers, most of them heading south into Judea. Wealthy widows with sweeping robes watched over by silent slaves. Whole extended families, including wizened old men and tiny twig-fingered children, all carrying their bedding on their backs. Herod's officials riding to and fro making sure law and order was kept. And mixed in with these, the goat herds and craftsmen and all the other travellers who make up the usual traffic. "It's amazing that so many people live so far from their families," said Mary, gazing around one evening as darkness fell and campfires began to flicker everywhere around us. "I wonder if the emperor knew his census would cause this much movement." I shrugged as I poked our own fire with a stick. "He probably doesn't care." "No," she agreed, breaking up a little cake in her fingers and handing it to the skinny children who'd crept up to her side. "No story today," she told them. "It's late, we should all be asleep soon. But take this." I watched her watching them go. "You can't give them all our food." "No," she said again, "but I wish I could give them more. I thought we were poor, but them." It was true. And we were especially lucky in that, unlike so many travellers, we had a donkey to carry our things. My parents had taken Boaz, but Joanna, who had a soft spot for Mary, had offered us her animal, Jackin. He was old and walked slowly, but having him made the journey a lot easier than it could have been. Plus, Mary's ma felt so bad for spending all those months barely speaking to her daughter that she insisted on giving us all the food we'd need for the journey. So all we had to do was hold Jackin's lead rope and trudge along. We'd be in Bethlehem within a couple of weeks, and when we got there, we'd find my parents and they'd show us where we were staying. Mary would give birth and we'd just stay put for 6 weeks or so. We'd head to Jerusalem to make an offering in the temple for the birth, then we'd go home, and life in Nazareth would begin again as normal, just with a baby. Straightforward. In a way, it seemed too straightforward. Mary told me I was fretting for no reason, but I couldn't help thinking that something was going to go wrong. One thing was food. I was starting to get tempted to hide some of it from Mary so she couldn't give it all away. In Bethlehem we could buy more, it was true, and hopefully we wouldn't have to because we'd be staying with my uncle. But what if something did happen? What if the plan went wrong? Mary was very pregnant and it was my job to look after her. But she seemed to think it was her job to look after everyone else. "The city of David," she told the children who'd clustered around her as usual, on the day we came into sight of it at last. "This is where King David grew up." She swept her hand around at the hills. "And this is where he kept his sheep, probably. Imagine that, a shepherd becoming king." "Shepherds stink," said one of the boys, wrinkling his nose. "When Herod dies," said another confidently, "we can make our own." "Shh," hissed his older sister angrily. "Bar said it's a secret." "But we're not supposed to talk about it," the girl snapped. Mary looked at me. Better not," I muttered. "Better not to know." The little boy was puckering up his face to cry. I jumped forwards and swung him up onto my shoulders. "And do you know why it happened?" I cried, while he squealed in shocked delight. "David became king because God wanted him to, and whatever God says will happen, happens." "Yes," affirmed Mary, looking more confident. "You see, there was one time," and she launched into another story. I smiled as I gripped the little boy's legs dangling over my shoulders. I liked having him there. It made me look forward to our own boy, our own baby, who we'd watched grow up. I could swing him on my shoulders and teach him carpentry and tell him stories of all that God had done. I'd be a proper father, and he'd be my son. The future held so many unknown things, I knew that. Jesus was not going to be an ordinary child. But he would still be a child. Our own little boy. A boy just like this one. There was no reason why any more strange or unhappy things should happen. At least not until he was grown up. The city was ahead of us. I could see the strong walls around it and a crowd of men sitting beside the gate. 100 stories flashed through my mind, Stories about David, stories about my own father, stories of all the things that had been done and said in this city. Joseph, son of David, the angel had called me in that dream. Ever since I'd been longing to go to Bethlehem. This was the city of my ancestors. I was coming home. There is no reason, I told myself firmly, why things should not be straightforward from now on. Stop. The man at the gate was tall and burly, and he looked like he meant business. He was glaring at us. Where have you come from? Galilee, answered Mary cheerfully. His nostrils flared, apparently in disgust. Where exactly? Nazareth, I told him. It's a small village just south of Sepphoris. Sepphoris? His eyebrows went up. Turning, he made a sign to another man, even taller and burlier, who was slouching against the wall. This second man straightened up and smiled at us slowly. It was not a friendly smile. Full of rebels, Sepphoris, said the first man, taking a step towards us. His chest was very broad. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw that a club had appeared in the hands of the man by the wall. It had nails embedded in it. I gulped. We're just visiting family, said Mary, in a higher than usual voice. For the census? He gave another grunt. Family name? My uncle's name is Ram, son of Mapthan, I told him. The carpenter. He has lived in Bethlehem all his life. To my relief, this seemed to be a sound of approval. The second man settled back against the wall, scowling. His club knocked against the stones. I could see holes and dents where he'd bashed it there before. And were those bloodstains? All right, said the first man grudgingly. You can come in. And he turned to the next unfortunate group of travellers. Mary and I looked at each other. Her mouth dragged a little at the corners. I could see she was unnerved. I squared my shoulders. Come on then, we're here. And I pulled Jack in forwards.